far as I'm concerned, it should be a mistrial, completely thrown out.
All of today's proceedings were covered by a publication ban because they took place in the absence of the jurors. All proceedings in which the jurors are not in attendance in the courtroom cannot be reported on due to this publication ban. Robert Kraychik reporting here in Lethbridge, Alberta for Rebel News.
So, but in truth, though, considering how long he's been in there, I think he's doing really, really well. He was a single dad, and I think that's the part that's eating at him the most, is being separated from his children.
Both Karbert and Olenik's charges stem from their participation in the 2022 Coutts protest and blockade, a peaceful and civilly disobedient demonstration that occurred concurrently with the Freedom Convoy protest in Ottawa of the same winter. The two protests shared ideological political objectives in terms of their opposition to this apparatus of control and surveillance marketed as public health by different levels of government in response to COVID-19, what I've dubbed the COVID-19 enterprise. The entirety of today's proceedings occurred in the absence of the jury, which makes them subject to a publication ban. Once the jury retires and is sequestered to deliberate its verdicts in the charges against the two defendants, the publication ban will be lifted. Today's proceedings were composed in two separate chapters, basically 90 minutes in the morning and 90 minutes in the afternoon. And this was a continuation of an issue, a matter that arose during the previous day's proceedings, which was this past Friday. And that matter occurred also in the absence of the jurors, which makes this issue subject to a publication ban, meaning I cannot report to you guys out there in the dear audience as to what that matter entailed. Both Chris Karbert and Anthony Olenik are charged with conspiracy to murder. The Crown is alleging that the two men conspired to murder police officers. They're also both accused of unlawful possession of firearms for a purpose dangerous to the public peace, and also of having committed mischief inducing damage valued at over $5,000. Olenik uniquely is accused of unlawful possession of an explosive device for a purpose dangerous to the public peace. The two men have pled not guilty to all charges against them. I also spoke with Alex Van Herk, one of the defendants in the Coutts 3 trial, alongside Marco Van Hugenbos and George Jansen. The three men were convicted of committing mischief, inducing damage over $5,000 recently here in this courthouse. So Alex, you're here today observing proceedings in the trial of Chris Karbert and Anthony Olenik. Why are you here today? Why is this important?
Well, it's very important, right? Because it's a stepping stone in justice as to what's going to happen to get a fair trial for these two guys. And I've listened to both sides of the defense counsel and the Crown's, and it kind of leaned both ways. I do feel there could have been some influence by the messaging that was out there, but on the other hand, I mean, the population at whole is kind of aware of what's been going on. If you're not aware after 2.5 years of two innocent people sitting in remand, then you're living in a hole somewhere, I guess.
This matter, this issue, which consumed the entirety of today's and this past Friday's proceedings, has now been resolved, meaning that starting tomorrow morning, the jurors will be brought back in and proceedings will continue as they normally do. I was fortunate enough to speak with Betty Karbert, Chris Karbert's mother, about the conditions of his incarceration. He is in remand. He's being held in police custody in the Lethbridge Correctional Center, which is a prison housing men convicted of murder, aggravated assault, sexual assault, violent crimes of that nature.
Okay, I'm going to be honest. The overall conditions in terms of for Chris for treatment of him, he has no issues. He says the majority of the guards there treat them with respect and listen to them. But the things that are out of their control, I will tell you, the conditions in for example, the amount of food they're given in a day, and this goes whether you're a 6'6" person or a 5' person, you get the same amount of food, and so they're hungry a lot of the time, which means they tend to go buy junk food because that's all you can buy in the commissary there, and the odd soup and stuff too. But overall, it's junk food. So So you're either losing weight because you have no money to buy extra food, or you're gaining weight because it's all junk food. And then as far as sleeping goes, it's not a comfortable situation for when the lights are on all night. And you're on, I believe, like yoga mats. So they're only a couple inches thick. So depending again on how big of a person you are, it can be very uncomfortable. And they get one blanket that's, to use whether they're hot or cold. That's all you have. So, and I'm not sure. What else?
I want to know about the abilities to exercise, to socialize. What is it like to either work out or not be able to? What is he availed of? And what about visits from loved ones and family such as yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, I'll start with working out. Chris hasn't been on grass since his arrest because the only place they have to go outside has about 20-foot walls all the way around it, so all you can see is literally the sky. And so they can run around this area that isn't very big, but they have that choice, and they can play, I believe it's badminton or something like that. And then in the little gym area, they do have a bike to ride, and not a lot in there. And in visitations, that's the hard part, because in the Lethbridge remand, even if you've been convicted already, when you have a visit, ever since COVID, it's never in person. So you're talking to him between glass on a telephone.
So on that specific charge of conspiracy to murder, you don't buy it. And secondarily, if I understood you correctly, you're suggesting that this over-the-top accusation, this charge, is used as a pretext for the Emergencies Act invocation.
100%, because otherwise what did Trudeau have in order to push his Emergency Act? He had no evidence. There was nothing. It was a legal protest taking place in Ottawa. So the only field that I think, based on the grounds for enacting the act, was the Coutts thing, and they have nothing on that anymore, then everything they did was wrong and unlawful.
The bad circumstances, the excise circumstances, how have you seen Chris change, if at all, physically, spiritually, across this time?
Well, physically, in the beginning, he lost 35 pounds very quickly because he wasn't eating well, which ended up how he resorted to eating the junk food because he was just hungry. And it's, you know what it would be like to be hungry every minute of every day, eh? So yeah, that's how. So now he's gained a lot of that weight back. He's feeling really, I guess, disgusted with himself is what he says, because he's getting way too big, and that. But in truth, though, considering how long he's been in there, I think he's doing really, really well. He was a single dad, and I think that's the part that's eating at him the most, is being separated from his children.
Okay, so you use the word innocent. Let's actually talk about that. Your assessment of this prosecution overall, your knowledge of these two defendants. What's your take on these accusations, these charges against the two men?
Well, I mean, these men were participants in the Coutts blockade. I agree. Did they say some things they shouldn't have? Probably, maybe. But at the end of the day, everybody's got to go back to that day and that time frame while we are living. And these people were down that rabbit hole a little further than maybe other people were. And I look at where we're at today to what's happened already and what's come out of the lies that they told us, that the mandates, the vaccine mandates, well, now there's evidence of the vaccines being something, basically being poisoned. They've been pulling them off the shelf. So were we wrong? And like they call us conspiracy theorists, but were we actually conspiracy theorists? What other things are happening in our world and our society that these guys are maybe a little more learned and read into as to what was happening and prepared to some degree to take a stand against this evil tyranny, what's happening. Did they have intent? I believe they had zero intent.
Dear Rebel News audience, if you value and appreciate our in-the-field original journalism and reporting, if you agree with us that this trial is of deep importance to Canadians and justifies the journalistic investment that we're putting into covering it, Remember that we can't do this for free. Unlike our so-called mainstream media competition, we don't get government funding, and we're essentially demonetized across all digital platforms for reporting on the other side of the story. I had to come in here from Ottawa. There's airfare, there's car rental, there's accommodation, there are consumable expenses like food and gas. And while we do it modestly, it's not cheap and it's certainly not free. We depend on our viewers to help us keep this engine going. So please help us out. Visit truckertrial.com, donate, and also stay up to date with our ongoing coverage.